It's empathy. It's understanding the customer pain. It's having conversations with them about what really is bothering you. It's not running in with, you should do this or this bad thing's going to happen to you. It's you've got limited resources, you've got limited budget. There's so much, especially as a CISO, there's so much pressure on you.
You are listening to the Mindful Business Security Show, brought to you by Focivity, where we answer your questions and simplify information security for small businesses. Get the clarity you need to focus on the things that matter.
Hey there, welcome back. I'm Accidental CISO, and this is the Mindful Business Security Show. I appreciate that you're listening today. I've often said before that marketers are some of the best hackers in the world, and today we're going to talk a little bit about that and explore how marketing and cybersecurity go together. I'd hate for you to miss the next episode, so please take a moment and subscribe if you haven't already. You should be able to find the show in your favorite podcast app. My guest today spent many years at the intersection of marketing and cybersecurity, so I'm thrilled to have her join me on the show today and geek out about this topic. She's currently the Chief Strategy Officer at a marketing agency called W2 Communications. Before that, she spent much of her career working in security and tech companies and VC-backed startups. She's held a wide range of roles, including CMO, COO, and several VC boards. She has often been tasked with difficult jobs, such as preparing organizations for mergers and acquisitions, turnarounds, and positioning them for successful fundraising efforts. She's been an active member of the cybersecurity community, helping to run events like the Security Bloggers Meetup at the annual RSA conference. And in the early days of Twitter, she curated a list of cybersecurity professionals on the platform called Security Twits that helped folks in the industry find one another. When she isn't building businesses and helping her clients with their marketing efforts, she works on a project called Spirit of Catharsis, a mental health organization that helps people heal and grow. Welcome to the show, Jennifer Leggio.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I appreciate it. That was quite the intro.
I am thrilled that you are available to join me today. So this is going to be really, really exciting. We've known each other on social media for quite some time, but this is the first time we've actually had a chance to talk, virtually face to face. So I would love to hear more about Spirit of Catharsis and the work that you're doing there. Can you tell me and our listeners a little more about that?
Sure. It's currently a passion project that I'm in the process of building into an NGO. Basically what it focuses on is leveraging not kind of non-traditional tools that maybe, some people are comfortable with, like Reiki or sometimes tarot or oracle cards, different ways to get people to get in touch with their own intuition or whatever their belief system is, to let go of whatever might be weighing themselves down or help them get out of their own way if they want to meditate and such. And the whole goal of it was, it's something I became very passionate about, got trained in, did a lot of work with over the last year or so or more. And really trying to help people that don't have access to traditional mental health care. The reason it's called Spirit of Catharsis is it, I'm not a mental health professional, although I have many of them, but help give them different ways. Like, do they give them the access to writing tools, give them the access to watercolors and paints, other ways for them to get their energy out that isn't serving them anymore, and just kind of live in self-energy, which is really, really helpful. So it's become something I'm really passionate about, and it's a nice break from thinking about cyber all the time.
Yeah, that's always important to, for mental health as well, as to not think about cyber sometimes, because it's enough to drive people to drink or whatever. Man, that's really fantastic that you're putting that together to help folks. If somebody is looking for that kind of help, like where should they go to check that out? Like, how should they find you?
Right now, I do have spiritofcatharsis.com. It's a holding pattern right now, but they can contact me on Blue Sky, as in where Media Fighter, Media PHYTER, or LinkedIn, and send me a note if they're interested in that kind of. Because again, it's all right now. I'm doing it volunteer, one off before I'm in the process of working through the NGO piece. So that's the best way for them to reach me now. But it will be a my goal was February to have it officially launched. I'm going for March at this point. So
Okay, so I didn't realize this is like brand new stuff.
it's brand new. Yeah, it's one of the reasons that I kind of made the career change I did at the end of last year to work part-time so I could spend some time working on this, because I wanted to do something that made my heart feel good.
And for anybody listening, I'll put the social media handle in the show description so that you can find that there. And so I wasn't joking earlier when I said that marketers are some of the best hackers in the world. And I want to get your thoughts on that statement. Do you see commonalities between the two professions and their underlying skills and approaches?
I'm sure there are a lot of hackers out there that are going to hate my answer, but I absolutely do. I often joke that marketers are social engineers. As a matter of fact, I social engineered my way to my first marketing job because I had zero experience. We're kind of mind hackers, thought hackers, perspective hackers in a sense. We're not coding necessarily, though sometimes you are in Salesforce or in writing formulas and spreadsheets. It's not the same. Not going to pretend. But having to change, like having to really kind of get in someone's head and change their mindset about an industry or a product or a company or a person is no easy feat outside of the technical skill set, which some marketers do have. I do not. I think that there are a lot of commonalities in the way that we have to think, because I'm constantly doing risk assessment. I'm constantly threat modeling my own life, let alone my job and what's going to work best and what's big risk. So I do think there are common thought processes, and we do social engineer.
Absolutely, and that was sort of the root of my comment, and I've said that on online before, on back when it was still Twitter. There was a thread that was going around about how to anger a hacker in 5 words or less or something like that, and I said something about marketers are better hackers than you or something like that, and I got a little bit of hate from that as well. But the reality is, you know that the whole basis of social engineering is to influence somebody to do something that you want them to do, and whether it's to gain access to systems or get somebody to wire money to some bank account somewhere, pretending to be the CEO or whatever. And, some hacker gets somebody, to part with 20 grand in a hack, and oh, that's a ton of money. And then we think of how much money do marketers get us individually to part with every year to go buy stuff like that. That's what they're doing. Like, it's the whole basis of that is the psychological side, social engineering, and helping and trying to get folks to behave in a certain way and do certain things. So
Exactly. And the other thing just thinking about too, especially like on the white hat hacker side, the folks that work internally, a lot of times I'll see them and I get mad, like especially when Black Hat comes around, see folks are like, oh, marketing, oh, this, oh, marketing that. Like, I'm like, are you doing a talk? Because that's marketing. So you're not going to go to any of the parties? Because marketing pays for those. So it's like, it's just, let's all love each other. Let's all get along. We're all part of the same community. We all help each other. The good guys, at least. The bad guys we're fighting against. The good guys, let's all get on the same page.
and it's so true. Like, it's not uncommon for people in the cyber field to hate on marketing, especially marketing for security products as well. And I was curious if you had kind of seen that similar sentiment, and get your thoughts on why you think that is, that's folks in cyber tend to hate so much on the marketing for the tools that we need and use. And is it justified? I don't know.
I feel like I have to like qualify everything. So to my fellow marketers, I'm sorry. I think it is justified, because for every skill set or for every career path, there are good folks that are really good. There are folks that are really bad. There are folks that are somewhere in the middle. There's a lot of really bad marketing out there. My first rule in marketing is no FUD, no fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And a lot of marketers fall to that because it's so easy to do that in security. As a matter of fact, I was just talking to a CEO this week at a venture capital conference about like the black holes of cybersecurity marketing. And that's one of them to fall into. So you're out there trying to scare people into buying your products. I could see why that would really upset the technical community. Also, You know, you go back, if we go back in time and really get into the debate about coordinated disclosure. And one of the things that, always bothered me is like, I get that sometimes companies want to release information to show the prowess of their research teams, and that is a great marketing vehicle and a great sales vehicle. However, if you are arming the attacker through your marketing, you are not doing it right. Also, if you use pictures of locks and black hooded hackers and things like that in your marketing, you shouldn't do that either. It's important for our industry. It's important, but a lot of it isn't done thinking about those things. And just, I know I've gone on a little long, but one thing I said, well, I did a keynote at Cyber Marketing Con, which is one of my favorite things, a couple of years ago. And I was talking to a room full of marketers, and I said, like, do you care about the outcome? And by the outcome, I don't mean your leads and your conversion. I mean, do you care about protecting people? And if you don't, I'd like you to leave this room and find a different career. Because you have to care about that to do a good job in this industry as a marketer.
That's a really, really good point. Like what should companies do, or what can they do, I suppose, to avoid this trap? Because the FUD thing, the fear, uncertainty, and doubt, or FUD, as we call it in the cyber industry. I don't know if folks outside of our industry will have heard that term before, but it is really effective. It's that, fear mongering, scare tactics. If you don't buy this product or you don't do this thing, you're going to get hacked. You're going to go out of business. All these terrible things. The world's going to end, and it is really effective, at least for a little while. But I've also learned throughout my cyber career that like that stops being effective. People start to tune you out, and it drives me nuts to hearing folks do that. And I feel like it's always important to flip it around, be like, but here's what we can do about it, and spend the bulk of our time, talking about that. I feel like helps as well. But anything else that they can do to avoid falling into this trap?
The number one skill, I think, for really good sales and marketers is empathy. Marketers get a bad rap. Sometimes the CEO makes the decision. Sometimes the board is coming down on folks. Sometimes it's not the marketing team's decision. They just got to grit and go with it. And I've been in that position myself. But it's empathy. It's understanding the customer pain. It's having conversations with them about what really is bothering you. It's not it's not running in with, you should do this or this bad thing's going to happen to you. It's you've got limited resources, you've got limited budget. There's so much, especially as a CISO, there's so much pressure on you. Now it's really scary out there to be a CISO with all the repercussions that could happen to you for things other people do, right? Like, what are you dealing with? What's your pain? Before you even talk about what you do, should be the first thing that you do, right? There's some elements of marketing where you can't do that, like public relations and so on. But at least in the one-to-one, or if we get into one to a few situations, I think that's, so if you're interviewing for a marketer, or if you're considering marketing, and if you're a small company and you don't have marketing, think about empathy first and understanding what that person is. And sometimes you build trust when you say, you know what, we're not right for you. I recommend this thing over here that's half the price, or go get this service, or go outsource it, or go do this, because we're just taking your money and we're not going to fix your problem. And sometimes I've said that to CEOs and they're like, what about our bottom line? And I'm like, they're going to come back, and they always do. Right. But it really comes down to caring about people. I don't want to, I'm not going to make this whole thing hippy dippy, but it really does come down to caring about people.
As a CISO, somebody who has run IT departments, who has run security departments, I hate high pressure sales and that kind of stuff. And the one that rode me the wrong way the worst was somebody from a very large tech company that I told them politely, professionally, that I wasn't interested when they called my personal cell phone after hours for like the fifth time. Um, and their response was, well, I'll talk to your CEO and see if he thinks this is important. I will never buy anything in my entire career from that company again, from that one interaction. There was no empathy. There was no relationship. There was, no connection whatsoever. But the people who have gone the farthest with me and who I have followed and called back from one job to the next are the people who, like you said, had courage to stand up and say, you know what, we're not right for you, but you should look at this other product, or I know somebody you should talk to. Like that earns my trust big time. You're 100% correct there. And, like those are the folks that, when I do have something that does that their product is a fit for, or that they can do, like I call them back immediately and continue to use them in the future. It's so wild how that one little thing can make such a difference. You're absolutely right. And as somebody making purchasing decisions too, like when you do know you have a need of some sort, um, you know, like I was bombarded by phone calls every single day from people from different companies. And if I gave every one of them 10 or 15 minutes, I would do nothing else. Like it was that extreme some months. And so I would generally reach out to folks when I needed to make a purchase, but I had already done a little bit of research at that point and tried to find information. But it was, sometimes difficult to find reliable information and figure out what products or what space to fill gaps. So, do you have thoughts on, sources of information that folks a lot of times will turn to, like the, Gartner's Magic Quadrant or other kinds of publications like that? Like, are some more worth paying attention to than others to try and figure out what's in the space and where to even start when you're looking for cyber products?
Oh gosh. I feel like the Gartner question is a little bit of a double-edged sword. I've tried to be careful with answering as a marketer, but I'll tell a little. I'll spin a little yarn of when I worked at Cisco after we sold SourceFire to it. I remember I did a think tank with some CISOs there, and every single CISO, I think there were about 20 of them, and every single CISO that was in the room, I brought up Gartner because I brought up that topic, and they said that it's necessary to get something through procurement, but I'm not going to make a decision or a short list based on the Magic Quadrant. But there are, honestly, the way the buying cycle has changed and the buyer journey has changed and what I've talked about. So from a technical decision maker perspective, I think there have been a great eruption of peer groups like on Discord and Slacks and others. I think peer recommendations and honestly, like looking for good articles that are out there in the press because they're usually validated with third party support is a good way to start your short list. Quite frankly, that's what I think these days. I wouldn't go off of one arbitrary report that three people write.
For me, I've used Gartner and those types of things just to understand who's in the space, but I tend to turn to peers. Before Discord and Slack groups became a thing, I would turn to other people in my network and just shoot somebody email. But uh, I do see that, and I'm in some of those professional groups and see folks regularly talk about this kind of stuff, and the good and the bad too, because those groups also share if some company was behaving badly in the process as well. Uh, so that's also something to be aware of. Is as a business owner, if somebody's listening to this show, those kind of peer groups, if you don't already have some sort of a peer group online through Discord or Slack or some other community that you're involved in, uh, to ask about tools and things that your maybe other folks that are using, definitely look into that because they can be really really valuable to get this kind of information. And I find a lot of times that the business owners aren't sure what questions to even ask when it comes to security. And sometimes just within your peer group, when you start asking some questions around, a product or something, one of your peers, CEO or business owner from another company may be able to say, actually, I was looking into this, these are the ones I looked at, and they can kind of get you close, at least to start getting you pointed in the right direction. So, but I wanted to see what your thoughts were on ways that maybe IT and security practitioners who may also listen to the show, who are working in small organizations, might be able to borrow some ideas from marketing in order to be more effective when they're trying to communicate internally to other team members or leadership, sort of to market ideas, market their team, market their solutions that they've deployed internally, for instance?
Is it cheating to go back to empathy?
Not at all.
I mean, I think a big hack, for lack of a better term, going back to your earlier question, is know your audience, right? Let's just like we always know our buyer personas and our ideal customer profiles and things like that. Who are you talking to? Who do you want to get your idea through? What is their pain like every day? It's a very similar thought process. Okay, how can I present my idea to them in a way where they get on board and they want to become an advocate for it as well? And that can apply to anything, whether it's an IT person or not, right? Um, and back it up with data. Back it up with data. Why is this a good idea? How is this going to help? How is this going to help improve our product? How is this going to help improve the data that we're collecting? How is this going to improve our protection, reduce our risk score, what have you, whatever applies to that role. And then invite them in with you to that. Make that part of that is, and that's not always relevant because you might be someone that's on a totally different team and it may not be relevant, or you're trying to get superior support and this and that. And with superior support, it's make them think it's their idea. So go back to social engineering, right? But I think just knowing your audience and appealing to what they go through every day and positioning it in a way, even if it's indirectly, don't lie, always be honest. I'm a big fan of honest marketing. I know that's a lot of people don't talk about that, but but figure out a way that's going to get them emotionally connected. It's all about emotional connectivity to whatever you're trying to do. And either they can even if they're not directly involved, they can advocate for you. So I think that's the best advice from a broad range, considering how huge the IT world is. But I think it really comes down to like getting people to believe in something that's really going to change things for the better.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And this last question, I love to ask kind of a variation of this question to every guest host on the show, just because I like hearing everybody's different answers to a very similar question. If you had a magic wand and you could wave this magic wand in the air and have every small business owner or small business leader instantly just know and understand something about cybersecurity, or maybe cybersecurity marketing in this case, like what would that one thing be?
Data is important, but don't get myopic about your data. Qualitative information is just as important. If you get too myopic with data, it'll be like narcissists kind of following in to their own reflection, right? So if I just say that to any small business owner, marketer, what have you, I've seen this happen. And I'm a big data nerd. I'm a big ops nerd myself, but data is not everything. Sometimes you got to go with the gut. Sometimes you got to go with, I just had this amazing conversation with this person and it changed my way of thinking. And don't let it be like, well, the data says this one thing, but that's not repeatable. You just have that one data point. Just be open and flexible to the qualitative and the quantitative. I think that's the biggest takeaway in general for business, but especially cybersecurity, marketing, and sales.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I've kind of thought something similar. Raw data, it doesn't mean anything without interpretation. And I think what I'm hearing is it's that interpretation layer. If you get too caught up in the data itself and you lose sight of the interpretation of what does this actually mean in context with the business or the market, that's where you can kind of go astray even with all sorts of data. That's a really good way of approaching it. I like that answer. Nobody has touched on that yet.
Salespeople, especially, and marketing people too, are really good at, because they know the data from their like CRM and marketing automation systems better than anyone, right? Or their operations teams. So that generally sit in a more neutral middle. They can slice and dice and present that data in a way that looks good no matter what it is. right? So dig into it. But again, it's an indicator. It's not your only decision point.
So I've got some callers lined up here that want to ask some questions about cybersecurity and marketing. Are you ready to go to the phones and take some calls?
I am ready. I hope I can help people.
Awesome. Let's go.
Do the cybersecurity risks to your business have you confused? Visit Focivity.com/podcast. That's FOCIVITY.com/podcast and sign up to be a caller on a future episode.
So our first caller on the line today is Bruce Wayne from Gotham City. How's it going, Bruce? It's
Hey,
good to have you on the show today.
good to have you. Actually, this is Martin for sure. I'm in the Atlanta area. Recovering CISO, I think is the way I'm phrasing it right now, or CISO alumni. So I spent 13 and a half years, almost 14 years as a CISO in various hospitals. And at the end of last year, it just got to the point where, you know what, it was a good run, and I'm starting my own consulting vCISO. Does this sound familiar at all?
Maybe a
And
little bit.
maybe a little bit. And I'm working really hard. I mean, I think I was really successful as a CISO internally selling, but when you're selling to a company, a $4 to $20 billion a year company, the strategic long view is much longer than a small, company of 100 people that's maybe $60 million at the most. And I guess for me, the epiphany was, I'm like, why aren't they listening to me? I'm trying to tell them where they can be in 5 to 10 years. And then I started watching my business checking account, and I'm like, I finally get it. So I think for people like me, and Jennifer, I've been following you on social media, wow, for probably 15 years, since you were like 5. Can you give me like the top things that I need to be aware of as I'm talking to SMB leaders and trying to convince them, not convince, that's not fair, demonstrate the value that I can bring to them? Because sometimes I'm the right choice, sometimes I'm not. And there are deals I've turned down because it was very clear that someone internally was driving it who didn't understand, and it was going to waste their money. And I don't want people to waste their money. But maybe for people, for me, people like me, what can I do to be more effective, or what do I need to have in mind as I'm talking to these smaller organizational leaders about what I can bring to them?
So I'll answer your question, but one point, you made a really important point there. That is, when you're running a company, whether you're running it yourself as an SMB or you're at a larger company, in sales and marketing, qualifying out is just as important as qualifying in, because otherwise you are costing your own company money by chasing the wrong deals. So that's really, really smart. In terms of, getting your value across, for me, like if I were to just kind of, put my finger in the air and take a guess, given what you're doing, your resume, your backstory, all the work that you've done, it does speak for itself, right? It does. But I think asking them how big of a concern is security to them. And if the answer is, well, not that big of one, then that's an opportunity to kind of go into education mode versus sales mode, and that might build some trust. If it's really important, but they have a bunch of preconceived notions of what they think they need, you can't tell them that they're wrong when you're trying to sell to them necessarily, but maybe pivot them a little bit. Why do you think? Ask them questions. That's always the best way to get them to go a different direction, is asking them questions of, why do you think that you need this? Why do you think this is going to help you? Did you have an incident recently that is making you say this? Is this something you really think you need, or is this something a colleague is saying? But in general, in the value prop, um, for what you're doing, I think, you know, it's always about relieving, or it should always be about relieving the pain? How can you uniquely, with your unique experience, relieve their pain and get them to think about it in a way of spending to get? What are they going to get? They're going to invest working with you. What are they going to get from that? They're going to get assurance that, I mean, there's never 100% assurance in security, as we know, but they're going to get as much assurance as they can that certain things aren't going to happen, or they're going to have better visibility into things that they didn't even know might be happening in their organizations, or that they, yes, you've worked for some larger organizations, but security is security and it scales. And at the very core, the basic protection, defense, remediation, response efforts are similar. And you're capable of applying all those things to help them ease their pain, or take away their fear that they might have. And that's just not being in your, if I had shadowed you in a sales conversation or something, I'd probably give you a more finite, answer. But I don't know if it's helpful. I don't know if it's helpful or not, but
This is really helpful. I mean,
good.
a lot, I think it's validating things I've thought, but also you've done a little bit for me, at least me personally. You've reframed what I was thinking in a different way, and now I've got to process all that. But Jennifer, thank you.
Good. I'm glad.
As a small business owner and working in small orgs a large amount of my career, like the things we always say, we all wear a lot of hats. It's a lot going on. Everybody is spread thin because they're doing a lot. Like, you don't have this specialization in your role when you're the business owner. You're responsible for everything, and a lot of times you're doing everything. So you're incredibly busy, and you've got to decide what to put your time in. And it's the stuff that's going to move your company forward. And security a lot of times gets seen as being a point of friction. It's going to make things harder to do. And I think from a value standpoint, that empathy that Jennifer was talking about earlier, understanding them and really what they're looking for. The way I've said before is that they're looking for that easy button.
Yeah, to that end, I think one of the biggest things I encountered in one of the most disastrous sales calls I've ever been on was me not understanding that these folks weren't as sophisticated when it came to understanding security as I had been used to dealing with. And I walked in with some assumptions because I came in, sounding like the guy who knew everything, and just assume, and that was never the intention. But in replaying it in my head, I'm like, that was awful, and that was on me. So again, I think I've been doing this now for 4 months. A lot of learning, a lot of embarrassment, and a lot of learning. But Jennifer, that was really helpful, and I'm still processing it. So thanks, y'all. This was fantastic.
If there's one thing that I can add real quick, and you guys know this better than I do, being practitioners, is, a lot of people just see security as a giant black hole cost center. I think, we talked about FUD earlier, and you don't want to scare them into, well, it's going to cost you a lot more if you don't do this, so you don't want to necessarily take that approach. But I think finding a way of going in and asking them what their biggest concerns are. They don't want to spend money on security. Why don't you want to spend the money? What are you most concerned about? What about these concerns? And what if I can take that worry away from you, kind of thing, is a way to get into that conversation of improving their security posture without scaring them too, and without being, like you said, that person that knows everything.
Awesome. Thank you.
Our next caller on the phone today is Mike from Phoenix. Hey there, Mike. How's it going? How can we help you?
Yeah, so great to be here. I'm so excited, and thanks for inviting me. I've been thinking about and looking at the small business situation a lot, and I just wondering, as a small business owner, there's so many tools and apps out there that all say they're going to solve every problem I have and problems I don't know I have and every problem I've dreamed of. But I don't know where to start. I feel lost when I look at this expansive stuff. How do I filter through the noise to know what I actually need, what products realistically do, and which ones are important? Because I can't buy all of them.
Um, I'm glad you asked that question because there was something that I forgot to talk about earlier when I was asked about Gartner Magic Quadrants and things like that. Peer to peer, references and peer groups and things like that are helpful in helping you narrow down. Like, hey, does this thing really work? Does this thing really do what it says it does? What these marketing people say. But one area that I do think is good is if you're familiar with Gartner Peer Insights, which is free, I believe. And that's where people that have actually used products in the different categories will put up their experiences about them. I think that's more valuable. Don't tell any of the analysts that I said this, but I think that's more valuable than any of the analyst reports that go out there. So if you're looking for something, say, I'm just throwing out like attack surface management or something like that, pull that up, look to see what people have said about different products, and you can look at comparative views and stuff like that. And they're all validated. They're Gartner customers on the user side that provide that information. I think a lot of companies, I agree with you that there's a lot of marketing out there that makes everything sound like this is also going to drive your kids to school and help you go to sleep at night and all of that, right? It's like the Swiss Army knife of all technology. But that is hard to cut through all of that. One of the things that I have found, and I don't know if this is as tenable, no pun intended, of for smaller companies to do as larger companies do, but I found a big change in the sales process over the years. When I was still in-house at vendors, in the earlier days of my career, everybody they would do a bake-off. And then the vendors themselves started to get averse to doing bake-offs themselves and would be like, well, we'll do this other thing. We'll give you this walkthrough demo that you can just walk through on your own. You might maybe, kind of demand a bake-off if I were you. If you have the time, I know time and resources are probably at a premium for you to narrow things down. So you got three things that sound alike. Maybe just put them up against each other and see how they work. But I think Gartner Peer Insights is one where you can do research. We had mentioned before, like the Discord and Slack communities where there are a lot of different leaders. LinkedIn has some good groups on there that they'll qualify you based on what your profile is, what your title is. So they wouldn't let someone like me in, but they'd let someone like you in because you'd be in there evaluating, asking questions, and people will be posting about their different experiences. I've also found that LinkedIn is a good resource because I do this when I was on the vendor side and I was looking more like marketing tools or external agencies and things like that. People are posting more and more publicly about negative sales experiences, they won't be disparaging against a certain type of product, but they'll talk about a certain area of the industry. And like, I put a lot of money into this because this was the new hot thing and it helped me a little bit, but maybe worth like X% of what I paid for it. And I'm noticing people being more and more public about that. So doing some keyword searches on LinkedIn around maybe what you're considering.
That's really, really outstanding advice. Thank you so much, Jennifer. And definitely, Pure Insights is a great way to do it. I love your idea of looking through the reviews and looking for what actual customers have said, because I'll tell you that's where the real truth and the magic are.
Mike, you made a comment earlier about I can't buy it all or something like that. I can't buy everything. And that is so true. And it's one of the reasons why a lot of times when I'm working with the clients, like I'll do a security assessment and kind of give them this list of like, here's a bunch of stuff that you may, types of tools that you may need to close some of these gaps. But a lot of times I recommend to folks to find like an IT managed service provider who can provide sort of a drop-in turnkey tech stack of all of these security tools, part of it, like that keeps you from having to sift through all of the marketing for everyone. Now you just have to sift through the marketing for the IT managed service provider uh, as you pull them up. But, it used to be, we've talked about a little bit about this on some prior episodes too. It used to be IT managed service providers were primarily break fix. It was, the outsourcing help desk and IT support, but they weren't providing a full solution of cyber tooling and everything else. And there's a lot of them these days that have really matured their service offerings to where they can come in and they're buying tools and licensing on the backside where they can sell you just what you need and get you discounts based on their relationship with their providers. And you get the benefit of, this is their solution for antivirus. Um, is what we've historically called this. These days, we call endpoint detection and response. We've got even fancy names for things in cyber as they've changed over time. But they've already got that relationship and they can sell you just the ones you want, but it may be at a lower price point because they've bundled stuff together. So that may be an option when you're looking at how can I afford a range of tools and what should I have and what not. Like they've done some work to put together a group of tools that they know work well and they can support. So that's another a possibility there. But then, like I said, you still got to go through and understand the marketing of each of these providers, because a lot of them too are going to try and tell you they can do everything under the sun. So there is still that piece of, how much of this can I believe? What realistically can they do? For any of our listeners that are feeling like, gosh, I don't even know where to start. I can't buy everything. What's important? A lot of that work, at least for small businesses, has been done by these IT providers, or sometimes they're MSPs, sometimes they're MSSPs, managed security service providers, and they can even provide like monitoring for this. So we're like, if something gets detected, their engineers get the alert, they can look at it and then escalate back to you to say, hey, we detected something, we think this might need some attention, and they can walk you through whatever they need you to do to either gather more information or take care of it. Like it works pretty well for small business, especially just because you don't have that deep team with all of this expertise in house, because you're focused on running your business and doing what the business does. And for a lot of small businesses, IT and security, especially, that's not your core competency, and it shouldn't be. Well, thanks, Mike. Appreciate you joining the show today. Hopefully, this was helpful for you and it gave you some things to think about and a little bit of direction.
Yeah, thank you very much. This was very helpful and a great experience.
And our last caller on the show today is Mark from Maryland. Mark, it is great to have you here. Join us on the show, and look forward to hearing your questions. So, what sort of questions do you have for us, and how can we help you?
Yeah, well, hey, thank you very much for taking my questions. So I'm getting ready to start a cybersecurity consulting firm, working primarily with small, medium businesses, more on the smaller side than medium. But me personally, I'm kind of a shy person. I'm not great at going out and meeting people, at talking to people, at cold calling, that sort of thing. Even when I do meet with somebody, how do I explain the value of what I offer to a client?
I am a diehard introvert, which is interesting given the career path I have chosen. For me, sometimes when I have to go into sales calls, or now on the agency side, new business type pitches versus traditional sales calls, or if I'm giving a talk or something like that, and even before this podcast, I have to remind myself, you're doing this because you know what you're doing. You have the answers. You are the expert in this area. Remind yourself. So it's just a little mind hack that might help as you go into it. But in terms of getting your value across, I think it's similar to one of the earlier callers. It's really, it goes back to that empathy thing again. And when you get your foot in the door, and I'm guessing what you're talking about, by the time you get to the one-to-one conversation, you've already set that up, you're in the meeting.
Yes.
I didn't want to go into it when you were asking about the intro. So, is really going into it and, not starting with, this is who I am, this is what I can offer, and this is all the experience I have, and this is what I can do for you. It's like, hey, thanks for taking the time with me. Clearly you had an interest in this. What interested you about this? What are your pains? Where do you need the help? Where, what are you worried about? There's some there they seem like very basic questions, but especially like larger companies, it gets lost where people, like, they don't ask those questions. They just go in and just to talk about what they can do. And there may be something that you can uniquely do that they really need that you won't know if you don't ask that question. And then that might help you close the deal like right away. And then just, making sure, going back to you had said that, you're shy, although, you have very good presence. I mean, those folks listening to the recording were on video, but you have very good presence. I think that, just making sure that you're owning it, but you're owning it. I call it, with my team, I always talk to them about bold humility. Right. So just like really, like, people really appreciate it when you go and you talk to them like, okay, so that's what you're worried about. I can solve that. I know I can solve that problem for you, and we can do this together. And this is the way that I would lay this out. And I'm just using words at this point because I can't do what you can do. But that's kind of my high level guidance without going to specifics and knowing that specifically the business that you're launching and what your value prop is. I think that helps a lot, and that's lost so much in marketing and sales. Whether you're an SMB or a big company, whether you're a CEO or an actual, career sales and marketing person, people forget that the people that are buying are humans that are trying to, grow their business, feed their families, sleep at night, all of that. And so starting with those questions often helps to ingratiate yourself to them as well as show your expertise.
It's something too, since you're focusing your business specifically on vendor management, in small businesses, one of my favorite things to do is solve problems that aren't cyber and have the security be a byproduct. Like, you don't have to lead with security, solve some other business problem. And in small businesses, you may be solving an efficiency problem. You may be solving an availability problem, some sort of operational excellence problem. And with vendors, and obviously this will depend on what the small business does, but if their vendors, for instance, are critical to them to providing their service for their customers, how they manage those vendors and how they look at the risks associated with those vendors is going to be a really important part of this, just the general stability of their business and how well they can work. So I think, this might be an area where you can lead with potentially other business problems that they may be having, and the cyber side of it ends up sort of being a bonus, almost, that, like, as we're reviewing your vendors and their performance and that sort of stuff, yes, cyber will be a component of that, but we're going to look at the overall risk that this vendor may pose to your business: cyber, operational, financial, reputational, all of those types of risks that they may pose. And then if they can use your services to improve the way they operate, that's going to help them improve their services to their customers. So it could present you an opportunity as well to then help them almost take some of the similar benefits that you're helping them achieve by managing their vendors more closely, to turn that around when they're making their sales pitch of, we have this program that helps us manage our vendors really closely. This is going to make us a lot more reliable as a vendor to you as our customer. And they might be able to tout the security side of it too. If you've looked at cyber risk in there, uh, you know, that it's something that people are starting to pay more attention to. So as they're trying to put their marketing materials together for their sales stuff, you might even be able to mention some things that you're going to help them do. But if they flip that around to an outbound facing thing that maybe they could articulate just slightly differently in their marketing materials as well to help their customers or prospective customers understand like why maybe they're going to be a little more reliable supplier, a slightly more secure supplier. I had mentioned SOC 2 reports earlier with another caller, and it's sort of a third party attestation. Somebody comes in and does an audit. You tell them, this is how we do things. They audit it. Yep, they do what they say they do, and we find that their controls are suitable to reduce these cyber risks. And you can give that report to that customer then when they asked for it. And so it gives that customer now some confidence that you've had an independent, impartial third party perform this audit. And SOC 2 is done by CPAs, so their CPA license is on the line to be accurate and impartial as a third party assessor and auditor there. So there's different ways that you could focus on it. I think working with vendor management, that's such a big piece of what companies that are trying to do SOC 2 are doing, that if they're already focusing on that in the first place, like I could see you do it helping folks get ready with that piece of getting ready for SOC 2 in your consulting work pretty regularly.
Yeah, I agree. If I can just jump in real fast, Mark, if that's okay. He made a really good point when he was talking about solving issues outside of security, and especially for smaller businesses. One of those is obviously they need to operate as cost efficiently as possible. And if especially working, dealing with vendor management, where do they have redundancies? Right? Where they don't need redundancies. I know with some things we need redundancies and failover and all of those different things. You could do assessments for them of like, you could save money if you don't need this other thing. You don't need to renew this subscription here. You don't need two of these types of devices. This one can be configured to do what this one can do as well. I think is a good way to help talk about how like it's not just about the technology. It's also helping about like let's look at how we can assess your bottom line through what you're doing with your tech. Might be another way that you can approach the conversation to those that might be a little, like we were saying with an earlier caller, like you find that sometimes some of the smaller business owners aren't as secure or tech savvy as larger companies or that have whole teams to do those things for them. Starting with that cost consideration might be a good way to go.
Hey, thank you. Have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, thank you. So, Jennifer, we've had 3 really great callers on this episode. Good questions and good discussion. Any like key takeaways or parting thoughts that you want to offer for our listeners as we're wrapping up here?
Yes, a theme I think for all the callers and for this conversation is that's really important is there are two main ones that really came through. One is like, how do I get my value prop across, and how do I determine what to purchase, right? And it's kind of funny how they intersect from one direction to the other. So I think my final thoughts, especially for those running small to medium businesses that are making technology decisions and cutting through the hype, is really rely on your peer network. Yes, there are great marketing materials out there. There are great, and they're not so great. They're great salespeople, and they're not so great marketing materials, and they're not so great salespeople out there. Rely on your peer network. Use Gartner Peer Insights. Because one of the things that I talked about earlier with Mike, was that like marketing can't influence those. Those are from true buyers of the products. You're gonna get the hard truth, whether the vendor likes it or not, about how something went. Look through LinkedIn keyword searches, find those private groups that you can get into based on your role, where you can talk to other like-minded practitioners. That's going to help you the most, because especially if you don't have the resources of some of the larger organizations. And then in terms of pitching yourself, um, go in with empathy. I keep going back to empathy. It's my thing. You asked about it first. We talked about it goes the spirit of catharsis. Going with empathy to your sales conversations with SMB leaders. And honestly, this applies to large companies too. Like go in, ask questions. What's their pain? How can they help? Are you the one that can really help them? and you're going to go really far, and you're going to ingratiate trust. And your worst case scenario in that situation is that you're building a bigger network of people that trust you, even if you don't make the immediate sale. And in the end, remember, the long term is about protecting people. So that was a lot of final thoughts, but I tried to make it quick.
I agree completely. It all just comes down to that business context. Why are we doing what we're doing? What is it that we need? How does this fit in? And I really couldn't say much more than what you already said there. So that's fantastic. So if folks want to follow up or message you or follow you on social media or whatever, where can they find you online? I'll make sure to add that information to the show description.
Sure. You can find me on LinkedIn under my name, of course. And I am on Blue Sky under Media Fighter, which I know they'll put up Media Pyter. I'm still on Twitter, though I don't use it as much. Any of those, my DMs are open. Message me. I'm happy to help. I'm always happy to help. I love mentoring folks and giving them guidance, even outside of the work that I do every day, just because, again, like I said earlier, even on the marketing side, you have to care about the bottom line of protecting people first. And so I would love to help those who are protecting improve their reach.
It warms my heart to see so many folks in our field doing outreach and things to give back. Like every guest that's been on the show has some sort of thing that they're doing to try and make the world a better place. And even just the security side of what we're doing, trying to protect people, protect businesses and information. Like it's all, outward, bigger than ourselves sort of thing. I'm not sure what it is about the field specifically, but it's just really common. So I've loved hearing about the stuff you're working on. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today, Jennifer. The conversation around our callers' questions was amazing. And I want to thank our callers. And as always, a huge thank you to our listeners as well. I appreciate all of you. Please don't hesitate to reach out and interact on social media. If you think this episode would be valuable to someone that you know, sharing it with them is one of the best ways that you can support the show. Also, I haven't mentioned it in a while, but we do have some branded merch available on the Mindful Business Security shop. You can find the link in the show description if you want to check any of that out. So I am Accidental CISO, and until next time, stay mindful.
Don't miss our next episode. Be sure to subscribe in your favorite podcast app and follow us on social media. Visit Focivity.com/podcast. That's FOCIVITY.com/podcast for show information and links to our social media pages. This has been the Mindful Business Security Show, brought to you by Focivity.